Aboard the Eternal Dominance the command vessel of the 7th Imperial Fleet, Supreme Commander Vexter Krell of the Graxian Empire maintained a stiff posture on the observation deck. His quartet of eyes, every one a distinct amber hue, narrowed while observing the incoming ship displayed on the enormous viewscreen. The craft struck him as odd, unwieldy, lacking symmetry, and, quite honestly, an affront to his sophisticated visual tastes. "What under the 7 moons of practice is that object?" he queried, his third appendage making a theatrical gesture toward the display, while his primary arms stayed correctly clasped behind him, as suited his rank. Senior Analyst Plex Raw cleared her throat with evident nervousness. "It seems to be the diplomatic craft from the recently identified species, Supreme Commander. They refer to themselves as humans." She articulated the term as though it could pollute her speech organs. "And they anticipate meeting the splendor of the Graxian Empire in that asterisk?" Vexter's neck frills flared in astonishment. "It gives the impression they attached scrap metal to a refuse receptacle and dubbed it a starship." The bridge personnel remained utterly silent. When Supreme Commander Vexter was experiencing one of his moods, even breathing excessively could lead to reassignment to waste processing duties on the Empire's penal moons. "Initiate communications," he commanded, adjusting his ceremonial cloak adorned with 47 medals signifying conquest. "Let us ascertain what these humans wish to convey." The viewscreen flickered, revealing the image of a human. The being possessed a mere 2 eyes, a woefully insufficient count by Graxian norms, and its dermis was devoid of any suitable scales or protective covering. Vexter experienced a surge of distaste. How could such exposed beings endure long enough to achieve space travel? "Salutations from Earth and the United Systems Alliance." The human's facial features shifted into what Vexter would later understand to be a smile. "I am Captain Lena Rodriguez of the USS Audacity *. We are excited to establish initial contact with your civilization." Vexter inflated his chest scales in the customary demonstration of imperial dominance. "I am Supreme Commander Vexter Krell, 37th descendant of the Divine Emperor Krell Thar the Magnificent, vanquisher of the Orion Spiral, suppressor of the Zentari Rebellion, and legitimate sovereign over 2,719 star systems. You are poised at the boundary of the Graxian Empire, the preeminent civilization within the known cosmos." He paused, anticipating the usual effect. Typically, this was the point where new species commenced groveling, or, at the very least, exhibited suitable fear. Instead, the human produced a peculiar noise, a sequence of abrupt exhalations. Was it asphyxiating? Experiencing some form of convulsion? Apologies," Captain Rodriguez stated, gesturing with one hand. "It's simply, wow, that is quite the designation you possess. Must you recite the entire thing each instance you introduce yourself? It must result in lengthy meetings." Vexter became immobile, his neck frills fully flared in disbelief. Had this inconsequential being just laughed at him? At him a Supreme Commander? "Senior Analyst Plex Raw," he hissed under his breath. "What are the armament capabilities of the human vessel?" Plex Raw consulted her data device. "Minimal, Supreme Commander. Our assessment suggests their defensive screens would fail after just one barrage from our tertiary defense emplacements." Vexter eased slightly. So these humans were not only discourteous, but also militarily negligible. Perhaps this conquest would be straightforward after all. "Captain Rodriguez," he stated with a perilous serenity, "the Graxian Empire extends its welcome. We invite your diplomatic delegation aboard the Eternal Dominance for formal first contact proceedings, adhering to the Imperial Protocol of New Species Integration." "Excellent," the human responded with baffling enthusiasm. "We'll dispatch our shuttle immediately." Eagerly anticipating our face-to-face meeting, Supreme Commander Vextor Krell, 37th Desk. "Actually, would it be acceptable if I simply addressed you as Vex? That's quite a bit to commit to memory." The bridge descended into silence. No one had ever proposed abbreviating the Supreme Commander's title. Vexter's eye twitched involuntarily. Ready the reception chamber, he instructed through gritted teeth, and notify the Imperial Anthropological Division. These humans might represent the most singular species we have yet encountered. Little did he realize the full extent of their peculiarity that was yet to unfold. Initial diplomatic meeting goes awry. The Imperial Reception Hall was arranged following the most rigorous customs of the Graxian Empire. Immense banners illustrating the subjugation of 15 civilizations stretched from ceiling to floor. The perpetual flame of subjugation blazed within its 40-foot ceremonial brazier. 200 Imperial guards stood in flawless array, their exoskeletons buffed to a reflective sheen. Supreme Commander Vexter surveyed the area with contentment. This ought to sufficiently convey to these humans their appropriate position within the Galactic Order, he commented to Grand Diplomat Zoral Trong, who nodded wisely, his bejeweled head crest oscillating with the gesture. Indeed, Supreme Commander. Newly encountered species generally necessitate a demonstration of our grandeur before negotiations can commence correctly, Zoral answered, adjusting his ceremonial state robes. I have drafted the customary terms of vassalage. They are notably lenient for a species possessing such restricted technology. The colossal doors at the hall's distant end swung open, and the human delegation made their entrance. There were 5 individuals clad in what seemed to be identical blue uniforms devoid of any fitting embellishments or markers of rank. How was one meant to discern which humans to disregard and which to engage? Captain Rodriguez headed the group, advancing with an informal gait that utterly ignored the gravity of the setting. "Wow!" she proclaimed, her voice echoing improperly in the hallowed chamber. "This venue is quite something. It looks like Versailles conceived offspring with the Death Star." The other humans emitted those peculiar choking noises once more, laughing, Vexter mentally noted, while gazing around with expressions suggesting amusement rather than reverence. "Welcome to the core of the asterisk eternal dominance asterisk," Vexter intoned, his voice amplified by the ceremonial sound design. "You are in the presence of the empire that has governed this sector for 12,000 years. One of the humans, a robust male with facial hair, whispered something to another and both burst into poorly contained snickers. Vexter's left eye twitched. "Is something humorous human?" Captain Rodriguez cleared her throat. "Apologies, Supreme Commander. Lieutenant Jackson merely observed that your Imperial Guard's helmets bear an exact resemblance to an Earth kitchen gadget known as a juicer. It's simply an amusing similarity." Grand Diplomat Zoral gasped audibly. The Imperial Guard's battle dress had been conceived by Emperor Krell Thar himself and was regarded as the height of intimidating design. "Silence!" Vexter bellowed. "This is a solemn diplomatic rite. You shall display appropriate deference or confront the repercussions." Instead of shrinking back, Captain Rodriguez arched an eyebrow. "Apologies, but in our culture, diplomatic discussions typically commence with coffee and handshakes, not warnings of repercussions. Perhaps we ought to moderate the intensity slightly." Another human, a tall female with dark complexion, failed to restrain herself and emitted a loud "ha" before covering her mouth. "What is it now?" Vexter demanded, his forbearance crumbling. Nothing," the woman asserted, regaining her composure. "It's merely that your neck frills puff up when you're angered. It's rather like when our cats are startled. It's endearing." "Endearing?" Vexter's voice ascended to a frequency that shattered one of the ceremonial crystal chalices. "I am a supreme commander of the Graxian Empire. I have directed the conquest of 12 worlds. I am asterisk, not asterisk endearing." His outburst only exacerbated the situation. Now all 5 humans were laughing unrestrainedly, tears flowing down their faces. Grand Diplomat Zoral leaned toward Vexter. "Supreme Commander, I suspect this meeting is deviating from the established protocol. Perhaps we ought to postpone and reassess our strategy." Vexter, his neck frills fully flared in utter mortification, could only nod in stunned concurrence. Escalation through cultural misinterpretations. Following the calamitous first encounter, Supreme Commander Vexter convened an urgent meeting of the Imperial Cultural Advisory Board. The seven most senior Graxian scholars gathered around an ancient table fashioned from the bones of the final Kraken of Alderaan, their aged faces somber with apprehension. "These humans are dissimilar to any species we have previously met," declared Chief Cultural Advisor Ma Ren, her time-worn voice rustling like desiccated leaves. "They appear resistant to our customary techniques of intimidation and protocols designed to elicit respect." "Perhaps they possess cognitive limitations," proposed scholar Krevne. "Numerous primitive species exhibit laughter when faced with ideas too intricate for their immature intellects." Vexter paced the room, his ceremonial cloak rustling dramatically. "Regardless of the reason, we must reassert command over this diplomatic circumstance. The Divine Emperor anticipates this sector's complete subjugation before the upcoming solar cycle." "I suggest the ritual of imperial magnificence," offered Scholar Dozar, the most junior advisor at a mere 300 years of age. "No species has ever observed it without vowing perpetual allegiance." And thus the decision was made. The humans would receive an invitation to witness the most grandiose, most awe-striking ceremony within the Graxian cultural repertoire. The ritual of imperial magnificence commenced precisely at the fourth tone of the celestial chronometer. Captain Rodriguez and her team were situated in the observation gallery of the Grand Imperial Cathedral, an area so immense that minor clouds had materialized near its ceiling. "Welcome to the sacred ritual, unaltered for 10,000 years, proclaimed Grand Ritualist Pexmore. "You are honored to be the initial non-vassalized species to behold this exhibition of Graxian cultural dominance." The ritual started with 70 imperial choristers producing the harmonic resonance of ancestral devotion, a sound positioned somewhere between a foghorn and the mating cry of a constipated terrestrial moose. The humans exchanged looks, their lips twitching with suspicion. Following this was the procession of historical dominance, wherein 200 soldiers marched in a formation so elaborate it could only be fully grasped from an orbital vantage point. Regrettably, from the humans' ground-level viewpoint, it looked as though they were merely marching in circles, intermittently colliding with one another. Lieutenant Jackson leaned toward Captain Rodriguez. "It's akin to observing my nephew's kindergarten dance performance," he murmured, setting off a ripple of poorly hidden snorts among the human delegation. The ritual's main event was the ascension of the imperial proxy ceremony, during which an emperor's representative was elevated 60 feet into the air while intoning the 97 virtues of Graxian superiority. The intricate pulley mechanism, managed by 12 dedicated acolytes, gradually lifted ceremonial minister Trox Van skyward. "Observe," Vexter declared with pride, "the tangible embodiment of our cultural progression." Just as Minister Trox Van attained the zenith of his ascent, a cable gave way. The minister listed dramatically to one side, his ceremonial headwear, weighing roughly 40 pounds, slid across his face. In his sightless panic, he reached for stability, inadvertently activating the discharge of the sacred glitter of dominance. Instead of descending gracefully, the whole container emptied squarely onto the minister's head, generating a shimmering nimbus that trailed him as he swung erratically back and forth. The humans completely lost their restraint. Captain Rodriguez bent over, struggling for air amidst bursts of laughter. Lieutenant Jackson physically tumbled from his seat. Communications Officer Wei had tears cascading down her cheeks as she gripped her abdomen. "Enough!" Vexter bellowed, his voice reverberating through the cathedral. "How dare you ridicule our hallowed traditions?" Captain Rodriguez attempted to reply, but could only manage a wheeze and an apologetic gesture while persisting in her laughter. "This constitutes a diplomatic calamity," Grand Diplomat Zorl whispered urgently. "Supreme Commander, we must refer to the Imperial procedures for addressing unprecedented insolence." Vexter, neck frills fully flared in fury, gestured theatrically toward the exit. "Remove them! This cultural exchange is concluded." As the humans were led away, still overcome with mirth, Vexter couldn't dispel the unsettling notion that, somehow, the Graxian Empire had suffered defeat in a conflict it hadn't even realized it was engaged in. Humans reveal unexpected technological prowess. Supreme Commander Vexter stood upon the bridge of the asterisk Eternal Dominance asterisk, his bearing taut with controlled rage. The diplomatic debacle weighed profoundly on his thoughts, Yet more immediate issues now required his focus. Status update, he snapped at Senior Analyst Plex Raw, who was intently operating her console. Supreme Commander, we are detecting anomalous energy signatures originating from the human vessel, she answered, her voice laced with bewilderment. They seem to be conducting scans on us, but that should not be feasible. Their technological level is far too rudimentary to bypass our defensive shielding. Vexter constricted his four eyes. Display it. The primary view screen showed a technical schematic of the human ship. What had seemed like merely ornamental features or structural flaws were now emitting complex energy signatures that somehow circumvented the Empire's most advanced counter-surveillance systems. How are they achieving this? Vexter queried. Their vessel appears constructed from leftover components. Fleet technologist Dravik stepped forward, his mechanical third eye whirring as it refocused. Supreme Commander, it seems the humans have camouflaged their sophisticated technology beneath a deceptively basic external structure. It is remarkably clever, in fact. You sound admiring, technologist, Vexter stated menacingly. Dravik's neck frills flattened in deference. Simply offering an impartial assessment, Supreme Commander. The communications officer interjected. Incoming message from the human ship, Supreme Commander. Captain Rodriguez materialized on the screen, appearing notably businesslike compared to her earlier demeanor. Supreme Commander Vexter, notwithstanding our cultural disparities, we wish to pursue diplomatic ties. Possibly a technology-sharing initiative could aid our mutual comprehension. We have assumed the initiative of transmitting some elementary specifications of our ship's propulsion mechanism as a sign of good faith. Vexter signaled for the data to be received, anticipating primitive nuclear fusion or perhaps rudimentary antimatter containment schematics. Instead, the technical diagrams that materialized on the screen elicited an audible gasp from Dravik. Is this data valid? Vexter pressed. Dravik's hands shook as he examined the information. If these specifications are authentic, their fundamental propulsion employs principles related to quantum folding, concepts our own scientists have merely hypothesized. They have resolved the Kravexis instability dilemma that has perplexed our engineers for generations. On the screen, Captain Rodriguez smiled guilelessly. We observed your vessel still utilizes conventional warp propulsion. Our quantum fold drives offer significantly greater energy efficiency. We would gladly assist in upgrading your fleet. Assist in upgrading the Imperial fleet? Vexter felt his sense of superiority choked by the abrupt, discomfiting awareness that these laughing, disrespectful beings might indeed possess technology surpassing the Empire's grasp. That is magnanimous, he managed to articulate. However, the Imperial fleet needs no external aid. Captain Rodriguez nodded, her expression impassive, but her eyes glinting with what Vexter now identified as barely contained amusement. Certainly, just a congenial proposition. Incidentally, we have also noted your ship possesses some intriguing armament systems. Would you object if we sent over our security lead, Commander Blake, to explore potential joint defense arrangements? Before Vexter could object, the view expanded to reveal another human beside Rodriguez. Commander Blake gave a professional nod, but the true astonishment was what stood next to her. A fully functional KT-9000 combat automaton. The precise model representing the apex of Graxian military engineering. The exact model designated as the Empire's most guarded secret. We have been producing these units for training simulations, Commander Blake mentioned casually, tapping the droid's shoulder. Our engineers implemented some enhancements to the targeting algorithms. The initial design possessed a minor weak point in the primary sensor cluster. We corrected that for you. Plex Ross swiveled towards Vexter, her face aghast. Supreme Commander, that particular model was deployed merely 2 lunar cycles past. There is no conceivable way they could have obtained it, reverse engineered it, improved upon it, asterisk and asterisk manufactured their own iterations within that interval. Unless... Vexter grasped with mounting apprehension. Unless they had been monitoring the Empire for a much longer duration than anyone presumed. Unless their apparent lack of sophistication was a complex ruse. Unless these humans, with their incessant laughter and casual disregard for propriety, were, in truth, substantially more perilous than the Empire had conceived. I am beginning to think, Vexter stated deliberately, that we should reevaluate our strategy regarding these negotiations. The Empire's intimidation strategy proves counterproductive. Following an emergency convocation of the Imperial War Council, a revised plan was formulated. If diplomatic efforts and cultural exhibitions had proven ineffective, maybe a display of sheer military power would compel these humans to recognize their position. The Graxian Empire had brought innumerable civilizations to heel through intimidation. Surely these humans, despite their unexpected technological prowess, would react to an appropriate demonstration of might. "Deploy the dreadnoughts," Vexter instructed. Within hours, 5 colossal Imperial dreadnoughts materialized from hyperspace, arranging themselves in an offensive configuration around the solitary human craft. Each dreadnought rivaled a small moon in size, heavily armed with weapon arrays capable of turning planets into molten spheres. On the bridge of the asterisk, Eternal Dominance asterisk, Vexter permitted himself a gratified smile. Establish a connection to the human vessel. When Captain Rodriguez appeared on the screen, she seemed entirely unfazed by the armada encircling her ship. Indeed, she looked to be consuming something, casually lifting small brown discs to her mouth. "Oh, greetings, Supreme Commander," she said brightly. "Apologies for the snack. We're enjoying what we term cookies to mark First Contact Day. Would you like us to dispatch some? Our culinary specialist makes exceptional chocolate chip ones." "No." Vexter disregarded the extraneous food-related chatter. "Captain Rodriguez, you are presently encircled by the 7th Imperial Battle Group. Each dreadnought possesses sufficient firepower to annihilate your vessel 1,000 times over. Perhaps now you comprehend the power of the Graxian Empire." Rodriguez nodded reflectively while chewing. Definitely overcompensating for something, but impressive all the same." A choked noise emanated from somewhere on the Graxian bridge. "This is not a subject for levity," Vexter thundered. "We insist upon your prompt capitulation and acceptance of Imperial dominion." Rodriguez arched an eyebrow. "Or else what? You'll obliterate the sole human ship you've ever met and forfeit any possibility of acquiring our technology? That appears self-defeating." Vexter hesitated. She had a valid argument. "In that case, we shall board your vessel and seize your technology through force." "I would advise against that," Rodriguez countered calmly. She manipulated something on her console. "There, I am transmitting a live visual feed from approximately half a light-year distant. You might find it noteworthy." The view screen divided, displaying a sector of seemingly void space. Except it was not void. Dozens, no, hundreds, of human ships abruptly flickered into existence as they disengaged some form of concealment technology. Vessels of varying dimensions and designs materialized, constituting a fleet that dwarfed the Imperial battle group. "Just some associates we contacted when we surmised this discussion might become intricate," Rodriguez clarified, taking another bite of her cookie. "They happen to be in the vicinity," military strategist Calvin nearly gagged. "Supreme Commander, our sensor arrays failed to register any of those ships until this moment. How is this achievable?" Rodriguez smiled benignly. "So, regarding those diplomatic talks, shall we recommence? Perhaps with reduced intimidation and an increased quantity of cookies this time?" Vexter, for the inaugural time in his distinguished military tenure, found himself utterly without words. The Human Viewpoint explained. Subsequent to the unveiling of the concealed human armada, Supreme Commander Vexter grudgingly consented to another diplomatic conference. This instance, however, was scheduled to occur in neutral territory, a space station hastily assembled at the boundary between Graxian and human domains. The meeting chamber was devoid of the imposing majesty typical of Imperial settings. Instead, it contained a plain circular table, which Captain Rodriguez had insisted upon. "In my culture, round tables signify equality among participants," she had clarified, much to the dismay of the Imperial protocol officer. Vexter showed up with a restricted entourage: Grand Diplomat Zorl, military strategist Calvin, and cultural advisor Ma Ren. They discovered the humans already present, with refreshments laid out on their portion of the table, including the enigmatic cookies Captain Rodriguez appeared partial to. "We appreciate your consent to this discussion," Rodriguez initiated, her tone unexpectedly formal relative to prior interactions. "I believe our initial encounters were suboptimal, and I wish to elucidate certain aspects of humanity that might foster better mutual understanding." Vexter gave a curt nod. "Continue." "The Graxian Empire engages in galactic affairs through dominance, tradition, and structured hierarchy," Rodriguez stated. "We have examined your history spanning 12,000 years. Your expansion occurred via conquest and subjugation. This has provided you with stability and order, and from your standpoint, that constitutes effective rule, correct?" Vexter affirmed, somewhat taken aback by the precise appraisal. "The powerful govern the weak. This represents the natural cosmic arrangement." Rodriguez smiled. "That is where humans diverge fundamentally. Our past is convoluted. We have experimented with empires, dictatorships, oligarchies, all systems based on dominance. They invariably collapsed over time." She activated a control projecting a holographic timeline of human history. It depicted chaos and violence, with civilizations ascending and collapsing in quick succession. "We came close to self-annihilation on numerous occasions," explained Commander Blake. "However, each setback imparted a vital lesson. Inflexible systems fracture under strain. Adaptability and cooperation yield superior long-term results compared to domination." Military strategist Calvin scoffed. "Feeble philosophy masked as wisdom." Lieutenant Jackson dissented. "Not feeble, pragmatic. Upon finally venturing into space, we had learned to direct our inherent competitiveness toward innovation instead of conquest. We discovered that diversity in thought and method yields more robust solutions than mandated uniformity." Cultural advisor Ma Ren leaned in, genuinely intrigued. "Yet you possess military strength that equals or surpasses ours. How do you harmonize this with your assertions of favoring cooperation?" Rodriguez chuckled, but this time devoid of mockery. "The universe presents dangers. We are not naive utopians. We construct formidable defenses and develop potent technologies precisely so their use becomes unnecessary. We term it, speak softly and carry a substantial deterrent." "This clarifies your perplexing diplomatic style," Grand Diplomat Zorrel deduced. "Your informal manner, your laughter during our ceremonies, it wasn't simply insolence." "No," Rodriguez confirmed. "In human societies, excessive formality often implies insecurity. Genuine confidence requires no ostentatious exhibitions. We laugh not to ridicule you, but because rigid hierarchies and coercive tactics strike us as antiquated, like observing children engaging in imperial make-believe." Vexter bristled. "The Graxian Empire is not child's play." "Certainly not," Rodriguez replied gently. "You have constructed something remarkable and lasting. But alternative methods exist for interacting with the cosmos. The Graxian method involves demanding deference through fear. The human method involves earning deference through deeds. We deem allies more precious than vassals." As much as it wounded his pride to concede, Vexter was starting to comprehend. These humans were not merely disorganized or discourteous. They functioned under an entirely distinct framework of galactic interaction. "And your technology?" he inquired. "How does it progress so swiftly absent the centralized guidance of an empire?" Rodriguez smiled. "Competition, collaboration, and one additional element that might be most difficult for you to grasp. We avoid excessive self-seriousness. Laughter and ingenuity are intertwined for humans. Our most significant advances frequently occur when we are prepared to laugh at our own errors and attempt anew." For the first time, Vexter considered whether there might be something valuable to glean from these peculiar, laughing beings after all. Final confrontation and subsequent resolution. The precarious diplomatic headway was instantly nullified when an urgent communication disrupted the proceedings. A subordinate Graxian officer materialized on screen, his neck frills fully flared in alarm. "Supreme Commander, the Divine Emperor has made an unscheduled arrival. He requires immediate reports concerning the subjugation of the human species." Vexter went rigid. The Emperor himself? Present? Now? This conference is concluded, he declared brusquely, getting to his feet. The humans shall stay here pending further instruction. Captain Rodriguez also rose. Actually, that arrangement is unacceptable for us. We shall accompany you. Impossible, Vexter stammered. No alien species is permitted audience with the Divine Emperor without appropriate protocols and rituals of submission. Rodriguez folded her arms. In that case, I recommend you rapidly formulate some revised protocols, because we intend to meet your Emperor as equals, or there will be no meeting. Before Vexter could retort, the door slid aside, revealing Emperor Krell Thar the Magnificent in his full seven-armed, golden-scaled splendor. His ceremonial battle armor incorporated fragments from 1,000 vanquished worlds, and his crown contained the compressed remnants of an actual neutron star. Where are these humans about whom I have heard such extensive reports? The Emperor's voice resonated, augmented by both technological and genetic enhancements. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward and smiled. Presently here, I am Captain Lena Rodriguez from Earth. Commendable crown, by the way. Isn't it rather weighty? The Emperor's multiple eyes widened in astonishment. No entity had addressed him with such directness in 700 years. You have the audacity to speak to the Divine Emperor without performing obeisance? He thundered. Yep, Rodriguez answered plainly. Where I originate, we evaluate individuals based on their conduct, not their designations. The Emperor's neck frills expanded to their maximum intimidating span. Then evaluate this conduct. With a gesture, he energized his personal shield and unsheathed the fabled Sword of Subjugation, a blade that had felled monarchs from 100 different worlds. Rodriguez remained unfazed. Instead, she erupted in genuine, unrestrained laughter that echoed throughout the chamber. I apologize, she managed, wiping moisture from her eyes. But do you genuinely transport a sword in space? That's quite charming. The Emperor bellowed in rage and charged, only to halt abruptly mid-movement as a tiny red dot materialized on his ceremonial chest armor. That indicates a targeting lock from our fleet, Commander Blake clarified placidly. A single command from Captain Rodriguez, and your constituent atoms will be dispersed across 3 star systems. Profound silence enveloped the room. The Emperor, perhaps for the inaugural time in his extensive existence, appeared uncertain. Here is the proposition, Rodriguez stated. Her smile vanished, her voice steady and grave. Humanity holds no interest in your empire, your methods of subjugation, or your hierarchical structures. We are explorers and merchants. We are amenable to establishing peaceful associations and mutually advantageous trade pacts. However, we shall never, under any circumstances, kneel. But the Emperor seemed truly perplexed. Without subjugation, how is order preserved? Through reciprocal respect, Rodriguez replied. Something one earns, not compels. She proffered her hand, a human sign of greeting and accord. What is your decision? A novel form of relationship in your 12,000-year history? One founded on partnership rather than dominance? For an extended moment, the Emperor gazed at the offered hand,